During last night's Money in the Bank 2023 Premium Live event, John Cena made a surprise appearance in which he declared that WrestleMania is coming to London. This is of course because Money in the Bank was taking place in London, and he was basically geeing up the crowd to such a degree that they were liable to explode at pretty much any time. They'd already seen Drew McIntyre return, for example. But was he being honest with us? That's the million-dollar question at the moment, because I have to start by saying I don't necessarily think that John Cena was being entirely honest with that crowd. And as is John Cena, he will undoubtedly vanish into the ether, having F5'd AA'd Grayson Waller, and just vanish into the ether where he no longer really has to deal with the consequences of the choices that he has made. We're going to see substantial column headlines devoted to the idea that WrestleMania is leaving the US, WrestleMania is going to the UK, but there are so many reasons that that will never actually happen. The closest that the UK's ever got is SummerSlam, which was Bret Hart versus a British Bulldog. That should tell you how long ago that was. It was a hugely and tremendously successful period for the WWE, but WrestleMania is now a cult status event in United States history. And while the WWE's continentalization plan, they avoid the word globalization for a reason, is expanding at a rapid pace, and we will see events further in the UK, at least one a year, one in Australia, one in India. China are making bids as well to get premium live events. While we will see all of these and the launch of NXT Europe, NXT Asia, NXT India and more in the days to come, what we will not see is an event the size and scale of WrestleMania moving onto UK shores. The WWE, in particular Vince McMahon, who oversees as part of the Endeavour package both the UFC and the WWE, are working on expanding to different countries. But actually leaving the US is not the intention. That is not just their home and their spiritual home, but it is also where their most rabid fan base is. One of the reasons we're seeing these changes to different countries is an increase in profit margins and a less of a reliance on the Saudi Arabia deal. The Saudi Arabia deal undoubtedly makes the most money for the WWE, in many ways quite literally being the highest source of profit for the WWE at times, depending on where we are in the calendar. But it also brings with it a whole host of new fans who will continue to watch the product, buy t-shirts and generate income. It also means, and this is why we're seeing them in the UK and Puerto Rico and so many places, it also means that you get less availability in the United States, and this creates opportunity because if there's less availability, it increases the likelihood of sellouts in smaller arenas and stadiums for events like the Royal Rumble, like WrestleMania, etc. They are now having regular 2-day WrestleManias, which means much more in the scale of tickets to sell. It's a bucket list item for me. I have every intention of going to WrestleMania, but I do not believe for a second we are ever going to see it in the UK, because it does generate a huge income for wherever hosts it. And while it would generate a huge income when it comes to London with the tourism and the like, and to be clear, the UK government is very keen on events like this when it comes to the aftermath of Brexit, that does not mean that the WWE and the United States are ready to let that one go. Vince McMahon still considers the US to be the home of WrestleMania. That is not going to change. This doesn't mean that we won't see big events. I don't think it's impossible that we see a SummerSlam return to the UK at some point soon, but John Cena was just geeing up a crowd that he knew would buy into it in every possible way. The celebration of the UK crowd isn't a new thing. Since the launch of NXT UK, UK crowds have consistently been the best source of entertainment during UK shows, even though Money in the Bank contained magnificent matches, great fun, wall to wall, apart from a real big slowdown for the main event. The crowd themselves made sure that they were entertaining without taking away from the match. They certainly made their voices heard in the main event, but I will say in the main event I got bored as well, so we got there, but the first 20 minutes were very slow viewing. They certainly added to the entertainment. You saw, for example, Seth Rollins controlling the crowd in the rhythm. They sung for Nakamura as well. There's a little bit of love for Sami Zayn the day before at SmackDown. So they know how to keep the energy going. They sung the entirety of the Cody Rhodes theme. That's not something you get in the US either. So the energy of that crowd is passing on to the wrestlers. I've heard many reports of wrestlers after a match coming back to Guerrilla and saying, wow, I need to do that again. Wow, I really enjoyed working in front of that crowd. Why can't we get that all the time? And this is one of the things that WWE is seeking to create by making themselves much more rare. It also means, and here's a fun one that you're not going to like, it means they can ramp up ticket prices because the lack of availability means they will still sell out. So if, for example, they went to, let's say, Dallas, Texas, 4 times a year. Well, pretty much every time you go to a show, you're like, oh, we saw them 3 months ago. Why would you go to this one? If they only go once a year, that changes things entirely because all of those people who would just spread it out over the 4 are now condensed into one time frame. They're pushing for it and they can raise the ticket prices. Of course, they're still having events in other cities. They ain't losing anything, but they are gaining extra from your tickets. In the UK, there's a clear cost of living crisis and, of course, the aftermath of Brexit. So we have to be a lot more careful of our money. A lot of people did not make Money in the Bank with that in mind. They still sold out in a big way. All in, as we know, AEW's big event coming to Wembley sold a monstrous amount of tickets. So it's certainly possible for the WWE to do it. Plus, on the by and large, AEW's tickets were quite expensive when you consider the situation in the UK. Going back to WrestleMania just for a moment, I don't ever see it leaving US shores. But I do think you'll hear the phrase WrestleMania level event more often. They've used that to frame Saudi Arabia events as well. PLEs, and the intention with PLEs is that a handful will stay in America, but the vast majority of PLEs going forwards will be tour events. That's the plan, that's the intention. You've already seen this. After WrestleMania, we had Backlash in Puerto Rico, we had Night of Champions in Saudi Arabia, we've now had Money in the Bank in the UK, and we're back to the US for SummerSlam. They're hoping to do exactly that. The Big Four would remain in the US: Survivor Series, Royal Rumble, SummerSlam, and WrestleMania. In between all of those, the PLE events would be out of America, creating that urge to see, spreading the word, and also becoming the global leader in wrestling. Now, they already are, admittedly, but if they become the global leader, they continue to spread the word, they continue to gain fans, and even though viewership in the US goes lower and lower, it simply does not matter. There is a reason that YouTube has WWE listed as one of their top 10 channels at the moment. It is making a huge impact globally. They launched on TikTok and became one of the biggest names there. The WWE know how to get attention, and that is exactly what they're doing right now in a global continental market. We will be hearing more about shows in Australia. We will be hearing more about at least one show a year in the UK. We will be hearing about potential continuation of the Saudi deal. And we will be hearing more about bids being put in place from China. There'll be more on this as it comes. Please remember to hit subscribe. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again.